Right. Good afternoon, everybody. So, how's your preparation for exam now? When will be the exam, Rasika?
It's 20th next month, I think.
Next month, right? So, how's your preparation now? Have you studied or not, or what? Because this time it was very challenging, because last times I think we remember that we had a sort of a hybrid sessions where you physically participate also, and then we had the online. But this time I think it's fully online, right?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So that's the problem, right? Okay. So what I wanted to do today is to very quickly, I mean, we don't have to take much time, right? Very quickly go through some of the areas, and to have a bit of a recap of what we have done, and to give some sort of a idea of how some of the questions, at least the questions that coming from my areas, which is more on SME developer, SME and economic development side, and then financial analysis little bit on that side, and then risk management side, that you will be able to try to give a bit of understanding of how that is going on, right? Okay. Now, before we start, we discuss little bit on, you remember, we discussed little bit on economics, right? And then we discussed the characteristics of economy, the policies, the fiscal policy and the monetary policy, and then we went on a bit of a more detailed discussion on that, right? So now I would like really a participatory approach here, right? So rather than I'm teaching it again and again, which doesn't make sense, and honestly, without the sort of a proper introduction, it would be very difficult for me to conduct the lecture also. So we discuss about the two economic policies. Number one is monetary policy, another one fiscal policy and the monetary policy. So Mr. Prasanna, can you please tell what is fiscal policy? I'm trying to recap what we have discussed. What is fiscal policy, Prasanna?
Yeah, the government, the rules and regulations.
Okay, or rather, how government would get the income, and then how the government would spending the money, right? So that is what we call the fiscal policy. If the income is higher than the spendings, we call it, it's a surplus budget, or the fiscal situation, and or like in Sri Lanka, if the expenses are high compared to the inflows, we call it's a deficit situation, or the budget deficit. When it comes to outflows, we discussed there are two types of outflows. What are those, Ms. Madhuvanti? Madhuvanti, are you there? What are the two types of outflows? Srilal? Cannot remember, or what?
So achieve full employment. Achieve full employment.
Yeah, achieve full employment is the objective of fiscal policy, which is fine. So how you understand full employment here? How you understand full employment? So it is actually utilization of or use of all productive resources efficiently and 100%, right? So that you call the full achieving the full employment. So this is the objective of the fiscal policy. But what I asked was like how the spending would be. There are basically two types of spendings we discussed. What are those?
The capital expenditure and recurrent expenditure.
Very good. Capital expenditure and the recurrent expenditure. So capital expenditure means for the capital goods, and recurrent expenditure is for the day-to-day activities. Okay. And then we discuss about the inflows. So there we discuss why Sri Lankan budget is in deficit. If somebody asks a question, why Sri Lanka or why Sri Lankan budget in macroeconomically, why it is deficit, what is your answer? There are a number of things. Rasika?
Our expenses are always more than the income, sir.
I mean, very simple answer is our expenses are always more than the income or inflows. Why we discussed few things. Why our expenses are higher? Number one,
salaries of government employees.
very good. So we have rather very big government to be be maintained. So government salaries and all of the associated cost would be high. That is number one. Number two, which is of course a recent event, Sri Lanka.
Loan repayment.
Repayment of the loan and the debt facilities. And number three,
import expenses.
is our import expense. So because of those, compared to the inflows, that we have a reasonably higher outflow, and that has resulted we are having a budget deficit. And when it's come to the inflows, actually, what's the problem with our taxation? We discussed that, because taxation is one thing that you get money. So what's the problem with Sri Lanka's taxation?
That there's no transparency.
Okay, there's no transparency, but what is the main issue of the taxation? I would like somebody else also. Thank you, Sri Lal, for very active participation. But who can? Lahiro, are you there? Amarasena? Lahiro? Is Lankani, are you there? Mr. Ponnambalam? Sivanogaladan?
Yes.
Yeah. So please tell me what is why what's the problem with Sri Lanka's taxation? Sri Lanka, we have more. What sort of a taxes? We discussed this, right? Indirect taxes. Very good. So we have indirect taxes, and most of the time the tax are based on our consumption, right? So then I told this that we are having a consumption-based taxation regime, not as the income-based taxation regime, right? So this is what I said, right? So then as a result, what is happening is that our tax income is low, number one. Another very important thing is that the people who should pay taxes, like the rich people, affluent people, they are compared to their income, they are paying a little bit of more lesser tax, but then the general public, by way of consumption, they pay quite a higher tax. That is the other element I would like to, we discuss. And then we discuss all the other issues also. And then as a result, the Sri Lankan economy, we said it's in deficit. That is the thing. And now, of course, to make the matters worse, other than we have the physical deficit or physical cliff, we have another cliff we call it is the balance of payment deficit. And can any one of you tell what is the balance of payment deficit? Sri Lal?
The deficit of import and export.
The balance of payment deficit is the difference between import and exports. So that means our imports are high, and mostly imports are depending on fuel, but on the other hand, that that our imports are generally high and our exports are generally low. Then we discuss a little bit of export, why our export are less. So what are the reasons? What are the reasons? We talk about around 3 reasons for that. If you can remember. Mr. Sivaratnam or Gangajaram, sorry, Gangajaran. Can you remember? Ravindran, can you remember? We said that there are three main problems. One thing is that our export market is not diversified. Export market is the same old usual market. Then we said our export basket is not diversified. So that means we are still exporting the goods and rather services, or goods and services, which we used to export for 50 years ago or even more. And then we told that and we discussed that our value addition is less. So as a result of all these phenomena, we can see that our exports are relatively lower than imports. And on the other hand, because of the mainly, I mean, okay, forget about vehicles and all of that, but mainly due to the lack of fossil, we have to do a huge imports on monthly basis. So that may be the reason that yesterday or day before, that we also have seen that there are a lot of vehicles, in front of petrol stations, claiming that the petrol price would go somewhere 500 or 1,000 and or something like that, or maybe we might have a petrol shortage within the country, and then to take it from there. So that is the thing, right? So now we stop for a time being. Last time there was a question, if you see the question paper, of export competitiveness and how Sri Lanka's SME policy framework would try to, or rather, or maybe like your suggestions, how we can make Sri Lanka's exports much more competitive, right? So if I ask a question, I will give this question for you, where you just give a rough sketch of, maybe we can take 5 minutes, rough sketch of the answer, and then please let me know what are the points, because this is something very similar to last time question. So no one knows whether this time the similar question or maybe will come, right? So please write the question. Question is, export competitiveness is an essential part of SME development. Essential part of SME development. However, we have realized that Sri Lankan SMEs are not up to the required level in terms of competitiveness. Give reasons for this, and give reasons for this, and narrate your policy recommendations. එකක් තමයි reasons for less export competitiveness. Second part of that is give your policy recommendations to address the situation. So to answer this, you should know a little bit of more macroeconomic knowledge. Last time the first question was something around that. So I will give around 5 minutes. Just sketch your answer. I don't want you to write the answer, but at least to have a sketch, and let us discuss what are your points, right? I'll give you 5 minutes. Right, shall we ask from who? Mr. Sriral, what are the issues why the Sri Lankan SMEs are less competitive?
So still, I thought that still we export as primary items, for example, tea, paper, ceramics. So we can export it using value additions.
Okay, one problem is issue of value addition. So if you see on value addition, what are the reasons that we were lacking value addition? Why we cannot, what are the issues that we want? I mean, which is then goes to our next section also. Why there's a lack of value addition in generally in SME sector?
Lack of skilled laborers and lack of technology.
I would say more than skilled labor, the technology, lack of technology. Technology gap. Another one is skilled labor. Right. Why there is a technology gap? Why, on the other hand, why the SMEs are quite reluctant to invest in technology? Asika, what do you think? The main issue is that the lack of proper research and development, R&D, research and development, because research and development will go for innovation, and such innovations will in turn to fill the technology gap. And for that, which is actually one of the recommendations which is actually supposed to do, but government it's not very strongly driving. It's I would say the industry or SME and universities linkage. This is one thing, and other one is that our percentage of GDP, I told this, which is allocated for SMEs, are relatively lower. So what is happening in Sri Lanka is that like in last 50 or even 100 years, that we still try to sustain ourselves on the primary industries or primary agricultural products. Like, I mean, good example is cinnamon. And we still try to export cinnamon in bulk form or the bale form, where we don't go for much of the value addition. And as this value addition, our SMEs are not really competitive in terms of our products and internationally that we and in terms of our pricing also. So this is the trajectory that you may have in the exam. You may have to look, okay, percentage of GDP allocation for research and development. This is one part of content. And in Sri Lanka, we don't have a proper mechanism of developing a good R&D base, and the link between normally R&D done by universities or the state institutions or state structures like ITIs and all of that. So then there should be a proper linkage between those organizations to SMEs, and then so that will then spur the technology gap or the use of technology, and use of technology will contribute for higher value addition. So what is the issue with skilled labor? Skilled labor, the issue is that we don't have, our training, proper vocational training. Even sector, vocational education, technical vocational event. So please try to understand. I cannot remember the abbreviation. So event is technical education, like technology courses, like something like VTAs, vocational training institutions, authorities, and then of course the institutions like German Tech, so that they will play a major role. So this is again one of the main issues. And what is the second issue that we have? High labor cost. Higher labor cost. So this is again what is happening is because of higher labor cost that our products are very expensive. It's becoming very expensive, and then this will be not competitive. So what are the reasons for high labor cost? Is high labor usage. So how to reduce high labor usage? Again, doing what?
Revise cost of living. Revise cost of living.
No. The cost of living reduction of cost of living is not, we cannot do here. No.
Introduce technology.
Input technology to lower the manpower.
High labor. So one is again technology, as some of you said, technology. So having more technological orientation will give sort of a use of less labor, right? So that means, like, automation, mechanizing and all other will give that, and then so that would really reduce the high labor cost. So that is one thing. So technology is, so use of technology. Again, once it's the use of technology, then these are the reasons. So if you really see, when it comes to Sri Lanka's lack of competitiveness in the SME sector, mostly it's lack of use of new technology, state-of-art technology, modern technology, backed by research and development, innovation, and that we are supposed to get the support from the highly skilled labor, right? So higher skilled labor is a problem. It's not that we should switch to the lower skilled labor matter, but we have to make sure that we compensate high skilled labor towards the involvement of or infusion of technology. And what's the other reason for the export competitiveness? Third reason, which you may also, as bankers, which you may also as bankers, which may also be a little bit responsible.
Egg is the documentation part.
Lack of low cost funding.
Yes, or I would say high cost of funding, or rather we have an issue with access to finance. So what would happen if the cost of funds or cost of borrowings are higher for SME? What would happen? So their production cost will increase. Their production cost would increase means that they don't have proper, I would say, proper pricing mechanism, and their prices are high and all of that. I mean other countries. So cost of funding, of course, there are two things. One thing is, I would say, the macro situation. So this is with interest rates, which we discussed previously, and we will come back to that in a minute. Another one is to have normally something we call venture capital, availability of venture capital. By the way, what is venture capital means? Because now in Sri Lanka, we haven't heard this thing called venture capital that much. What do you mean by venture capital? Venture capital is one other alternative to the conventional banking. What is venture capital? What is the meaning of venture capital?
Investing in the business.
Yeah. So that means somebody is investing what capital? Equity capital of the business. So now in most of the other countries, that you can see that either there is a government funds or maybe a properly formed private sector to invest in securities, or sorry, invest in business. So venture capital, the good thing of that is that SME, I mean, even though equity is expensive, even though that funding you have to give, SME might have to pay the dividends and all of that you don't have an immediate burden of repaying to the bank. And the venture capital is very, very important for countries' startup ecosystems. SME startup ecosystem, because the thing is, no bank is it's very much willing to give loans to startups, because A, you don't have the credit history, B, you don't establish your cash flows or the repayment ability. In such a situation, having a venture capital is very important. Another situation here is that lack of proper credit guarantee institution. Credit guarantee institution. So that is also, so that is why, again, most of the banks are quite reluctant, because banks, I mean, you are bankers. Banks, we are operating from somebody else's money. So banks are very risk averse in that context. Banks do not want to put their good money into behind a business that the bank is not sure of repaying it. So in such situation, at least for some selected sectors, we should have some credit guarantee facilities. Of course, in Sri Lanka, we had some credit guarantee funds, but those are just funds, but not institutionalized form. So what we need is a properly set professional credit guarantee institution, which I think now, of course, ADB is talking to the central banks and trying to work on this, right? So cost of funds, so value addition, high cost labor, and the cost of funds. And what's the fourth impediment of Sri Lanka's export competitiveness? What's the fourth reason? What did you put as a fourth reason? Other one is enforcement, or I would say law enforcement. So that means in Sri Lanka, that it's very difficult to enforce the laws, or rather I would say even, I mean, getting approvals, even incorporating a business, getting license and all these stuff, export license, that license, all of that. So this system also had to be accommodated. So these are the issues, main four issues you see, among others, that why normally, I mean, those are the impediments or the reasons for Sri Lankan SMEs to be less competitive in the market. Now the $1 million question comes. What the policy framework of Sri Lanka says in order to achieve globally competitive SMEs. Hope everybody of you got the copy of the policy framework. Have you got it to ITSL? Rasika, have you got that?
Yes, sir.
But you cannot remember, right? So there are basically, I would say, the 4 pillars, or 5 pillars are there. And there are 2 cross cuttings. Please remember this. So the ultimate aim is to have globally competitive SMEs for the policy framework. So what are the things? Number 1, access to finance. Please read the recommendation given in that booklet. Another one is access to technology. Another one is market linkages or market access. Another one is building entrepreneurship. Another one is research and development. Actually, research and development and access to technology could be considered as 1 pillar, but it says 2 pillars. So there are recommendations which government should do in the policy framework has very, very clearly spelled out, right? So I would like, in answering that sort of a question, it is very important that you go into a little bit deeper onto these things and then explain. Can you remember what are the two cross-cutting pillars or cross-cutting activities?
Resource efficiency,
Resource efficiency and
regional balance.
balance.
yes, regional balance. What do you mean by resource efficiency? Resource efficiency means that you use more renewable energy and all other resource efficient methods. Another one is regional balances. Regional balances that you basically they have a balanced growth. It's not only Colombo or whatever. So then the regions. So there are a number of recommendations like having industrial parks and all of that would be there, right? So I mean, unfortunately, the policy in Sri Lanka, one of the very important point is that we have all these policies, but the problem is that implementing of these policies are weak, right? I mean, to a certain extent, because the government also, you could see that there's a disconnect or disorientation of a lot of things with trying to firefight that. So that is a very pathetic situation of Sri Lanka now, because you have always tried to firefight and then there's one thing comes another, and of course with the COVID and all of that, everything got now stuck and all of that, that's fine. But as a policy person or as sort of policies, you have to always know this whole spectrum of activities if you really want to set up, and then the responsibility of the government actually to I mean, particularly government in the sense, I would say this is the responsibility of the particular ministry. Now, the ministry also, now we have a problem because we don't have a proper one ministry who is responsible for SMEs, right? So there we have number of small industries, bigger industries, and all that. So those are the issues. So the ministry's responsibility is to go into very deeply and very granularly on each of every pillar and to see, okay, where are they? And then you have to develop action plan. And that's why I once told even that you have to develop an action plan to do this. Okay, access to finance. Now, let's say, for example, like setting up a credit guarantee institution. So access to finance. And then, you have to then finalize or work on them with the timelines, with responsibilities, and with KPIs. So actually, that is the role of ministers and that is the role of ministries. Unfortunately, the ministries are so busy with some all unwanted stuff, but not focusing on the mainstream development strategies. And this is the problem that we are facing now. Okay. So these are the sort of things which we discuss about the competitiveness and then the exports and all. Then we move to an area where interest rate. We discuss about interest rate. We discuss about the relationship between interest rates and inflation, if you can remember. I would like you to take another 2 minutes and draw that relationship between interest rates and exchange rates. Sorry, not exchange rate, interest rates and inflation. And I would like somebody to explain in the class what is that. So we'll give 2 minutes for that. Interest rates and inflation. Prasanna, can you remember we discussed this? Interest rates, what would happen? I mean, if interest rates increase, what would happen?
Inflation will increase.
The cost will increase.
What will increase?
The
Cost of borrowings will go up, thereby
loans, what would happen to the loans? Loans will reduce. And on the other hand, what would happen to the savings? Savings will be increased. Why? Because interest rates are there high, so people would tend to save more. People will tend to borrow less. As a result, what would happen to the money supply? Rasika, what would happen to money supply?
goes down.
Money supply will reduce. The money supply reduce, what would happen to the consumption and investment? Reduce. As a result, what will happen? Inflation will reduce. Right? So this is what monetary policy transmission mechanism says. The reverse will happen if the interest rates will reduce. I don't want to tell everything, right? Savings will go down because there are no attraction for savings. Loans will go up because loans will be attractive because interest rates are cheaper. And then as a result, there are more loans, more money, and then you de-save your savings, so that means you have more money. So then as a result, money supply is there. So once the money supply is there, it will lead to more consumption and more investment. Then you have high inflation. Now I will ask a very important question. Think 2 minutes and tell me. Now this is the situation that we are facing in Sri Lanka. Now, right? We have relatively low interest rates, and now we see that we are having a high inflation with the prices. Government, what was the reason that government want to make interest rate low? Why government wanted to have this regime? Number one. Right?
To
Okay,
increase investment.
To increase investment, so to increase investment. But we are having this one, but this investment did not increase. What had happened? It increased more consumption. And toward the consumption, in the interest rates increase. Why this desired investment did not take place in Sri Lanka? Just think 2 minutes and let me know. Government wanted more investment, but why this investment did not take place?
Market instabilities due to the pandemic prevailed.
What is that?
Market instabilities due to the pandemic prevailed.
Okay, pandemic is one thing. You know, people were reluctant to invest, right? People were reluctant to invest. But okay, but that is more short term. But what is the other very important long-term issue? Why the investment of the country didn't pick up, which is related to our previous discussion also. Because sometimes there might be a question for you, like, you know, as per the current, I'm just telling, right? As per the current economic regime, the low interest rates, having low interest rates, the government of Sri Lanka expected more investment to take place. But that expectation was not made. I mean, you hardly see any business established. You hardly see any new export businesses receive into the country. You hardly see any big factories being built. Why?
Because of the law?
Because of the
Law? Government law?
the law, Mr. Srilal, it's like this. I mean, it was there from the beginning. I mean, yes, there's a lot of things we have to do in the law side, but that is not the only reason. Because that was there, no, so that is not that we know we have a Amutu law now, no. But there was one thing was lacking. What is that?
Economic stability.
Yeah, economic stability, or rather the I would say the confidence of the business sector. The confidence was lacking because people, even the people who have money, they kept their money, even though they are low interest rate, they still kept their money even at the banks or any other places, but they didn't want to invest. So that is where what I will always tell. So to do this, very important thing is to create a business enabling environment. So by having said that, I forgot, I think in that roof kind of a house, one other very important pillar, which I forgot, is to create enabling environment. Business enabling environment. The environment or the legal system, it includes legal system, regulations, bureaucracy, and everything which businesses are willing or able to invest and able to involve in the sector. So if the enabling environment is not there, so law enforcement is one of the very important things. But other than that, the country, the environment should be much business friendly. So that is where that we lack in Sri Lanka. So that is, I mean, if anyone to start a business, there are a number of ways, thousands of ways that he or she will discourage of doing a business rather than from encourage. That discouragement is coming at every level. So that is actually one of the main problems, that the entrepreneurship or the SMEs are not developing as we want. So it's not rocket science. It's very scientific cause and effect. The enabling environment or the enabling system is not as established, that you cannot see. So if you want to see the business growth, if you want to see a vibrant SME sector, you want to see a good development in the sector, first thing you have to touch is to create good enabling environment. So while I'm telling that, please refer to the sections in enabling environment. Doing business index, DBI, very important in macroeconomic level. So these are the things that the country, the president or whoever should work on, should be focused on. Now, how we improve the doing business index? What is our doing business index today, and how we improve in next year? What are the impediments? What are the bottlenecks? Where are the pressure points? Where are the red spots? And where the, you have to have a, normally we call this traffic light systems and all of them, and then to develop them. Okay, so these are something when it's come to the macroeconomy and SMEs, you have to remember, which might come questions or a little bit, tweaking on these sides. We'll take a short break until 10 minutes past 3, and then we go into the SME landscape, and then role of SME in economic development. Right, so that is our next session. So please be here around 10 minutes past 3 o'clock. So altogether you will have approximately around 20 minutes break. Okay, I hope I can hear you. So then we discussed, one other thing that we discussed was that the SME landscape. So we discussed about the poverty pyramid, you can remember. So Mr. Srilal, what is the bottom of the poverty pyramid, what you have? Can you remember what you have the bottom of the poverty pyramid?
Beggars.
Beggars. Afterwards? ඊට පස්සේ ultra poor. ඊට පස්සේ laboring poor, entrepreneurial poor, enterprising poor. And then we have enterprise pyramid, where we have on top we have who we have? Prasanna, can you remember? Rasika? Madhuvanti?
Multinational companies.
ඊට පස්සේ
International companies.
international companies, large corporates,
Medium, small, micro.
medium, small, micro, right? And then we said SME something like this, right? So sorry, something like this. Where this is the missing middle, right? So then we discuss about the characteristics of these people, and then we discuss our as banks, our responsibility is moving these people ahead from this to this level, right? So those things, please remember. Then we discuss about the role of SME in economic development, why SMEs are important for any economy, right? Where then we discussed on SMEs are what are the reasons why SMEs are important to an economy? Number one, they are
Largest
the largest employment provider. Second one, they are
Resource mobilizer.
they are resource mobilizers. They are
Taxpayers.
largest taxpayers at aggregate level. They are the incubators. They function as an incubator for the businesses, right? And then what else? What else?
Provide employment opportunities.
Yeah, employment opportunities are here. Yeah.
Balance regional growth.
And they related
Balance.
to yeah, they contribute to the reduction of income inequality and all. So those are the things that we should why we should foster SME industry, right? So then we went to a little bit of another discussion when it comes to the P&Ls, so and the balance sheets and all other, which I think some of the discussion that I did not do, but some of other lecturers also did. So in financial statement analysis, we went to the balance sheet, P&L or income statement, and the cash flow statement. So what is the snapshot here? What is snapshot here? This is snapshot, and this is the movie. So then we discuss about the typical balance sheet and the typical P&L, and then we discuss a little bit. I mean, I think that you did a little bit on that. So there will be some questions as a sort of that you will have a typical balance sheet and a P&L, or maybe then asked to calculate ratios, or maybe try to propose a good facility. So very important thing. By the way, what is the equation for DSCR? You know that. What is DSCR stands for?
Debt service coverage ratio.
Debt service cover ratio. Very good. So how this ratio calculated?
Profit before interest and tax divided by capital portion and interest portion.
Line interest, both current and the existing facilities. So what is the benchmark internationally or the optimally identified benchmark of DSCR to grant a loan facility?
1.5.
1.55 times. In some situations 1.25 times also it's fine, but 1.5 times is better. So that means with the existing cash flow, is the whiteboard the letters showing upside down or other side? I got a text for here. Rasika, can you see the whiteboard properly?
Sir, can see the whiteboard, but I think it's upside down, sir.
Why didn't you tell that?
You all have to switch to the presenters column. Like since IBSL online is presenting, it shows other way around. So once you switch to the IBSL online, it will clear.
Thank you, Achita. Who has to do that?
User can do it.
Okay. Can you all try to do this?
You all have to pin the IBSL online into your main screen.
Is it okay now? Indica?
No, sir.
Can you have you sorted out that? No? Okay, but never mind. Never mind. DSCR is debt service cover ratio. Then you know it's PBID divided by capital and interest, and then it would be 1.5 times, right? So this is where what we call the DSCR, right? So the main principle, there are two main principles in SME lending. One thing is credit history. You always look into the credit history. But the problem is if you don't have a crib or anything like that, it will be difficult for you to find the credit history. But on the other hand, if you have crib or any other referrals, it's very important parameter whether this person has borrowed and have established or proven track record. That is number one. Number two is the repayment ability, and very important point, rather than microfinance or any other loans, other sort of what we call the consumption loans. It's very important when it comes to SME or business loan, that ability of repaying the loan by the cash flow which is generated by the project. It's very, very important. So that is why I said there are two types of this lending. One is cash flow based lending is this. So you basically understand what is cash flow and then to develop. And then we went to a discussion of working capital. You remember, right? Because to understand the cash flows, to understand the DSCR more than anything else, we want working capital. And what is the definition of working capital? Indica, what's the definition of working capital?
Cash required for day-to-day business.
Cash or the funds required for the
Day-to-day business operation.
day-to-day operations of the business. So that means then we identified, okay, so how to calculate the levels, and then we identified that is when it comes to working capital days, debtors, collection, creditors payment period, debtors collection period, stock holding period, and then the debtors collection and the stock holding, and then plus or minus by the creditors payment period. So if the working capital is strong, if the working capital is long, in terms of days, it is good because then you have a little bit more cash. But again, then we discuss working capital cycle. There's no universal principle on the universal cycle. Working capital cycle is differ from business to business, industry to industry. And I told towards latter sessions, it's very important, like as bankers, that you, for every business, that you have the understanding of this working capital, the understanding of how the things operate, understand of how the cash flows are going on, understand of how the profitability goes, right? So those are the things that we discuss. And when it comes to ratios, we discuss about there are a few types of ratios again, right? Sometimes there would be ratio calculations, there are ratios we call profitability ratios. There are ratios which is liquidity ratios, ratios of finance and gearing, ratios of working capital, and other investor related ratios. Give examples of profitability ratios, Rasika. What are the profitability ratios?
ROA, return on assets.
That is investor ratio.
Yes.
Profitability ratio. ROA, ROCE, ROI, all are investor ratios. So that means what is our
Gross profit margin ratio, operating profit margin ratio,
GP
net profit,
margin, PBID margin,
NPM,
and
ROT.
net profit margin. So these are the main, I would say, the three profitability ratios that you have. Liquidity ratios. Current asset So current ratio, quick asset ratio, so those are the things.
Cash ratio.
Finance ratios, DSCR. How to calculate gearing? How to calculate gearing? What's the equation of gearing ratio?
Debt capital divided by equity capital.
Or loan divided by total capital employed. So this gearing ratio, debt capital, and then of course the other manifestation of this is debt to equity ratio. Right? Then we talk about working capital. Working capital, two types of ratios. Other one ratio is depending on the days, another one is depending on the times, or number of days. Right? So then we discuss about the debtors collection, creditors payments, and all other here. Stock turnover, time, debtors collection, time, how many times, so then we discuss the value debtors and debtors, and the stock turnover is good because very important thing is working capital. That is what we have to make sure is that it has to circle, it has to complete. So while you are completing the working capital cycle, means it's good for the business, because while you are completing working capital cycle means the profit will be out. If you take too much of time to complete the cycle, means that your profits will get delayed and all of that stuff, right? And then investor related ratios, we discuss all these ROE and ROA and all of that. So these are the things in the ratio analysis we discussed. If there would be any balance sheet, P&L, and are some of these ratios, please make sure that you will be able to do a proper analysis and answer. And finally, I would say, final ones that we discuss about credit risk management. So I don't want to repeat it because we have done this previously, credit risk management, very recently. So we discuss about different aspects of credit risk management, and then how you basically do, what are the things that you have to understand. We talk about this concept of information. There was a question last time on information asymmetry, how to reduce the information asymmetry. Then we discuss about some of the other appraisal methods, 3Cs, 5Cs, Campari methods, and all other. So those are the things that, at least on those things that you have to remember. So I think with this now today, I don't want to continue further. So it's almost now to 3:30. So I think most of you are quite familiar with the stuff. So please read and refer and try to answer the previous question papers where you would be able to get through IBSL and then prepare for the examination. Unfortunately, this time we did not have any single opportunity to meet in person. But if you have any question, my number is this. You can always text me if I'm not. Please text first and then call. 773 451 442, and tell who you are, because the thing is, I will not definitely associate with you, because this is a very, to be honest, very stressful sort of a class that I ever had without seeing you in person, and then and without proper involvement or proper discussion or proper active participation in the class. But I'm very happy that at least few of you really try to make the class alive and responding to the questions and all of that, but it is never be very closer. The thing is, to a certain extent, in a school or even a university, that's okay, where a lecturer would tell everything and the students would listen right or there, and then nobody knows what students do. But when it comes to more higher education, it is very much, I wanted more on interaction, but unfortunately, due to these reasons, it could not happen. So let's see how it goes. So this is my number. If you want anything, you can always call me, text me, and then call me. I will be busy on 25th and 27th. I will be out station, but 25th and 26th, but on 27th, and the rest of the time that I would be there. So if there would be any doubt or anything, you please ask any question. So before we wind up the class, any general question? Not individual specific question, but general question you would like to ask?
Sir, can you explain the structure of exam paper?
You mean did you have the previous paper where you had some, I think you had 8 questions, right? Do you have the previous paper with you? Any one of you?
No, sir, I don't have.
None of you have?
So it was uploaded to the classroom.
Yeah, Rasika, can you please tell how many, I mean, yes, you can get from Mr. Cicera, but how many questions you had?
There are 8 questions. Out of 8, we have to reply to 5 questions.
5 questions, 5 questions. How many questions altogether? 8 questions?
Yes, sir.
8 questions. So out of 8 questions, you have 5 questions, and how many, what's the period for 2 hours or 3 hours you had?
3 hours.
3 hours.
3 hours, right? Okay. So 3 hours means 16 to 380 hours. Sorry, 180 minutes for 5 questions. Cicero, it would be, it should have uploaded to your drive, but if you have any problem, please let me know and I will ask Menaka to send you it. Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah. No, I don't think the exam will be that difficult because it will be quite easy. And it's, I mean, this is not an exam that it will be really difficult to fail, right? So don't worry on that. But everybody of you should, what you should do is that you should try to get a good result or rather distinction or something like that. I mean, my challenge is not to keep you. My challenge would be definitely keep you fail. So don't worry, you will not fail. But on the other hand, to get a good distinction or good results again, it will be a bit of a challenge, right? So please, for at least read these other things. I mean, I know. I mean, some lecturers, different lecturers do the sessions in different ways, right? And that is normal, and everybody is not. I mean, in my one, I don't use any PowerPoints. I just basically discuss, draw the board. I mean, if you would be here in physically, we will have a lot of other discussion. We will have debates. We will have, I mean, everything we could not do here. But that is my style, and I never use PowerPoint presentations, and I don't like the class to be bogged up with PowerPoint. But there are some lecturers who would have at least 100 slides of PowerPoints, right? So that's fine. So this is different lecturers, and some lecturers are not like that. So each session, and then some lecturers would load you with a lot of reading materials. At the end of the day, you will never read anything, right? But I also don't want to do that. But what I would highly appreciate is that SME policy framework you should and you must read, right? Do you have any idea whether the exam will be online or in person?
So we have to come to that IBSL, sir.
Okay, so it would be in person, right? So that is that. So that means, I mean, because of online examination, because that's why I wanted to ask that from Menaka, because before I give my consent to the paper on questions, I don't want to do that because I have to recheck that when it's, because sometimes if it is online, that you can always, with all these books, so sometimes in the questions the depth might be a little bit different than physical exam. So that's it. Okay. Any other question? Okay, so this is my number. Please text me if you have anything. I would like you to do it from 27th onwards. Study, and then if there would be any doubt, at least on my sections, please feel free to contact. Right? Okay. So all the best to everybody, and hopefully that we will be meeting in the industry or maybe in outside. But unfortunately, since I cannot remember anyone's of your name, you must come and tell that you are in this class, right? So I would be, otherwise I wouldn't be able to recognize any of you. Okay. So take care, everybody, and all the best to the exam.